Welcome to Barnstable Today. I'm Nick Cortez. The village of Hyannis is as close as Cape Cod comes to an urban setting. Consequently, Hyannis features all of the convenience, charm, and yes, the problems that one sees in most small cities. But what is the true nature of Cape Cod's downtown? That depends on who you ask. The headline of an article by Molly Connors in Sunday's Cape Cod Times read, "Hyannis, a village with a reputation." And Connors seems to indicate in the piece that the reputation isn't good. That may be true. Coverage of certain violent crimes that have taken place in the village don't help the public's perception of Hyannis, to be sure. On the other hand, town manager John Klim, a Hyannis native and current Hyannis resident, believes that there is a disconnect between the way that Hyannis is depicted and the realities of day-to-day living in the village. Earlier today on Barnstable This Morning, he defended his position as he reacted to Connor's article.
I was struck by the fact that she really didn't reach out to residents that have spent decades here that know the village at all. If you look at who was quoted in the article, they have one gentleman who lives at the homeless shelter and an anonymous individual who put in a comment in the Boston Herald website. I don't know whether she needed to get an article written quickly or whether or not she lacks an understanding of the village of Hyannis. But clearly, if you read the article, you're not getting a sense or you're not hearing from those that have chosen to either stay here or move to the village of Hyannis. She brings up incidents that happened 3 or 4 years ago, and I just don't think that the article was a true representation of life in the village of Hyannis, and that's unfortunate.
You bring up an interesting point there. You say that they're citing things in the piece that happened 3 or 4 years ago, and that's true, but do you think that to people who sort of take a look at Hyannis from the outside in, that those things linger in the back of their mind and do shape their perception and ultimately shape this piece to a certain extent?
Well, it's kind of interesting because this reporter has now written at least 2 stories about Hyannis, about the issue of how what the perceptions of Hyannis are, and in reality, she's creating perceptions in her writing by not having a balanced approach to her evaluation of the village. Obviously, Hyannis does have its issues, as does every small city, and we're not denying the fact. But the reality is that Hyannis is a vibrant city. In the worst of economic times, we've seen tens of millions of dollars invested in the downtown area. We have a police department that is very, very responsive. We have a crime rate that doesn't reflect the perceptions that Molly Connors continues to want to write about. And so those are issues as well.
Speaking of crime in Hyannis and across the town of Barnstable, last week on Barnstable This Morning, Police Chief Paul McDonald joined us to break down the latest town-wide crime statistics. The police department last year received over 2,000 fewer calls for service than it did in 2009, and the chief attributes that change to the reduction of a much-talked-about problem in downtown Hyannis.
The overall year-to-year call for service, the reduction is directly attributable to 2 things. One, the homeless problem on Main Street, Hyannis, certainly has not been a problem this year that has been in the last several years. Mm-hmm. Usually that call for service alone accounts for about 2,300 to 2,400 calls. That's been reduced by almost 900 calls for service. That coupled with the number of false alarms, our false alarm reduction because of the new ordinance the town passed 3 or 4 years ago, that's down almost 30%, so that accounts for another 1,200 calls reduction.
Chief McDonald moved on to discuss a successful effort to make more drug arrests and an overall reduction in Part 1 crimes in Barnstable, which include murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and burglary.
These are the ones that really, tell you the type of crime problem that you have within the town. And as you can see, they're down 4% over a 5-year period. And our goal is to keep that going down 2 to 3% every year over the next several years. And we can do that by attacking the root cause of most of the problems here, and that is the drug offenses. And if you look at the next page on Part 2, you'll see the drug offenses are actually going up.
Yes.
Well, they're going up not because the problem's getting worse. The numbers are going up because we're being very proactive and very aggressive going after those type of criminals.
Right. So as we're looking at this sheet here, the drug offenses are up 35% year over year. But as you said, those statistics can be a little bit on the deceiving side, because it's not so much that there's a lot more drug activity in the town of Barnstable, but that the police are identifying and catching more of those people.
Right. Well, that's why we run these stats. You know, we want to look at what the problems, see where the problems are, see when they're occurring, and how they're occurring, and how we're going to address the problems. And one single common denominator for the Part 1 crimes, particularly the Part 1 crimes, is the subline is the problem with the trafficking, distribution, and the use of illegal narcotics. So over the last 3 years, we have made significant investments into our narcotics unit, and that's why we're pushing those numbers up dramatically.
This is a subject that you and I have discussed before as well, the perception of crime versus the reality of crime in the town of Barnstable. And I think as you look at these statistics, you see pretty steadily that despite what we might be reading about in the newspaper or fearing over at a place like Puffer Bellies or something like that, the town of Barnstable, by the numbers, is safer than it was 5 years ago.
Absolutely. It's a lot safer. There were no murders last year.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the aggravated assaults, you know, the felony assaults are down considerably, you know, but we did have 3 bank robberies last year. You know, that's rather sensationalized. You know, the media takes a look at that, they see that, you know, and I understand that. That's completely. But the robberies themselves are down significantly.
Yeah, certainly, you can't fault the media for covering big crime stories, and I never ever would attempt to do that. But still, in all, when we take a look at the actual numbers and we break them on down, we see that on the whole, the town of Barnstable is indeed safer than it was in 2006.
Absolutely.
The numbers indicate that the town as a whole is a safer place. But what about Hyannis specifically? Manager Klim has a great deal of confidence in the security of the village, and he cited a number of reasons why in our discussion earlier today. So how do you characterize Hyannis, John, as somebody who's lived here? I know you called it a vibrant city, but give us your personal perspective on living here day to day for so many years.
Well, I can characterize it by this. My wife and I have made a choice to live in the village of Hyannis, and we wouldn't have it any other way. We go to St. Francis Xavier Church. My wife grew up in Yarmouth, I grew up in Hyannis, and we both live in Hyannis now and have no desire to do anything other than that. Now, if it was as dangerous as one would be led to believe, I think that that would come into play in our decision-making. And as I said, I just wish that Molly Connors for once would go down to the Fish Hills area of Hyannis, go to Hyannisport, go to West Hyannisport, and talk to people about what they like about the village of Hyannis, the convenience of it all, the activities, the arts and culture that are here. All make Hyannis a very interesting place. If it was as bad as Miss Connors would have you believe, would hundreds upon hundreds of Barnstable residents choose to send their youngsters to Pope John Paul and to Sturgis School? And we saw the quote from the headmaster of the Sturgis School that says that there have barely ever been any incidents in all of the time that Sturgis has been there, and all of the elementary schools are in Hyannis. Would people make a conscious decision to send their youngsters to the village of Hyannis if they feared for their safety? Look at the thousands of people that were at the Youth and Community Center this weekend. You know, are those people so concerned about the safety of Hyannis that they've chosen not to be there? I don't think so. So
what do you think about the village of Hyannis? Email us your thoughts at btm@town.barnstable.ma.us and become part of the conversation. Now, let's take a look at this week's meetings. On Monday, February 7th, the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee meets in the Town Hall hearing room at 5:30. Also at 5:30, the Recreation Commission meets in the Selectmen's Conference Room. On Tuesday, February 8th, the Conservation Commission meets in the Town Hall hearing room at 8:30 a.m. At 3 p.m., the Board of Health meets in the Town Hall hearing room. At 5:30 p.m., the Golf Committee meets at the Old Barnstable Fairgrounds Golf Course. And at 6 p.m., the School Committee meets in the Town Hall hearing room. Wednesday, February 9th, there's an amnesty hearing in the Town Hall hearing room at 6 p.m. At 7 p.m., Old Kings Highway meets at the West Barnstable Community Building on Route 149. On Thursday, February 10th, Site Plan Review meets in the Town Hall hearing room at 9 a.m. Well, that's all for now. I'm Nick Cortez, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.